I'm Corbett Wall with DV Auction, here with your feeder flash for Friday, May the 31st, where on Thursday it finally took its toll. The floods flushed the feeders, and we felt like we were just on the tipping point. At any moment we could head down and this deal could break. And as we talked on the last visit, your row crops, the futures on all your grains, they just go right along with fundamentals. And everybody was just waiting and waiting and waiting to dogpile and buy the corn. They've seen all this flooding on TV, and they know it's bad in the Midwest where a lot of the grains are at, and they know that we're way behind on planting corn. And on Thursday it finally happened. You had a bunch of your funds that were ready to jump on the corn, and as they did, they drove that corn market up. And then you had your funds just waiting to short the feeder cattle, knowing that in turn would make it go down. And once they started, they had their computers revved up with those algorithms, and I mean, it just locked down the limit on your nearby feeder cattle futures. But tough day for your cattle producers. The feeder cattle down hard. They looked cheap enough as they were, but at the same time, your guys that are buying cattle to feed couldn't pencil anything out. And unless we saw a rise in your live cattle prices and your live cattle futures, there was no way that we were going to be able to buy any of those cattle at the prices that they were at. But they'll be getting cheaper now for sure. But look at the board on Thursday. June live cattle futures down $2.27 at 110.07 for June. August down $2.80 at 105.05. Your live cattle futures were holding in there pretty good because we've had a decent trade this week, holding mostly steady, if not just a pinch higher in most places. And it looked like they were going to hold pretty good, but finally late in this session, the pressure from the feeder cattle just sucked them down with them. Your August feeder cattle down to $4.50 limit. All your first three traded months were all down the limit, but $4.50 is the daily limit now, unless it goes to extended, and that's a pretty good hunk. But August contracts settled at 138.22 and locked down. September also locked down at 450, so you know they're going to be down again hard on Friday's session. 138.52 was September's close. October, well, it was also locked down the limit, and on out into your latter parts of this year and early next year, down hard but not down the limit. The March that we thought looked awful cheap at just 140 and change is now at 136.65. But all due to your grains. We know we're way behind on planting corn, and we talked about that. I'm sure they got a little bit done in some places, but where they really needed to catch up, and the eastern corn belt has just been horribly wet there, and just cannot seem to catch a break. There's places down on the Arkansas River, the Missouri River, places like that. But as you get south of I-70, yes, they plant corn down in there, but as an old man told me a long time ago, he said there's counties in Iowa that grow more corn than Arkansas and Missouri. And that may not be literally right, but practically it's pretty much right. But the heck of it is, eastern Iowa is soaking wet too, and a lot of those guys are way behind. They can trade their seed in for 100-day corn, and they'll probably get along just fine. But for now, it's not looking very good at all. And then also, what nobody else has talked about, if you get way up north of the flooding in North Dakota and moving into Canada and places like that, it's horribly dry up there. They need a rain in the worst way if they're going to get their corn to take off, and their pastures are also dry. But tell you what, Mother Nature has really been playing a trick on us here lately. But you look at December corn, which is the only one that really matters, up 16.5 cents on Thursday, closing at 452.25. Those are prices that are closing in on highs for 5 years, 5-year highs. That's how long your row crop farmers have been depressed and down. But good for them, bad for the cattle deal. November beans up 17 cents at 914.5. How could that be? Donald Trump ruined the soybean business for the United States. It's terrible. It'll never come back again. But yet, up 17 cents. broke $9 for the first time in a long time. But both of those crops, beans and corn, are competing, and they have to, for the remaining acres that have yet to be planted, and there's a lot of them. Of course, most of the guys don't start planting the beans till they get done with the corn. Your beans are way behind, but there's a lot of corn to be planted too. And yes, guys, still kind of in limbo. It takes a lot of different types of fertilizing to get that done, but still, for the guys that haven't got anything done yet because it's been too wet, yeah, they've got a decision to make there. But you look at your fat cattle trade. Your fat cattle trade's been healthy all week long. Who cares? Everything else, any kind of a bad element that affects cattle, it will overshadow anything that's good. That's just the way it is. We have no leverage in our market. We have no leverage in our futures market. It's so shallow, the pool of players in that, in both live cattle, but especially feeder cattle, that any fund can make it any price they want, anytime they want. They just get in and roll it and just ride and ride and ride. They can take it wherever they want it to go. But we had a good, healthy cash fat cattle market. We talked on our last visit, anytime we can hold it steady on a down market, we need to do it because it makes it one day closer that we get over the hump. But we had pretty significant trade on Thursday. It still wasn't enough to amount to a good volume for the week, but we don't know what happened after hours, and there could be some cleanup on Friday, although it may be tough to get the steady money on Friday. We'll see. As of the last we heard, they were still offering the steady money. But Southern Plains 115 everywhere, mostly steady, but a buck higher in a lot of spots in Kansas, because there was actually more 114 last week in Kansas than there was 15. Iowa selling live 116.5 to 117. They've been keeping a pretty decent premium to everybody else because they got so many of those clean confinement cattle and really, really high quality stuff. And dress sales in Iowa 187 to 188. That could be a buck or two higher there. Nebraska selling live at 116, which is steady, and 186 to 187. So good, healthy fat cattle market for a change. We get one leg up and we drop a shoe on the other side. It just seems inevitable that that's the way it works. Box beef cutout values on Thursday afternoon closed with choice cuts at 223.58, up a nickel. Selects 208.87, down $1.12. Both of those are slightly higher than the bulk of last week's trade. So we found a bottom on your box beef cutout values, and we're getting some seasonal support there. Your slaughter, hard to compare it to last week because we got that Monday holiday where everybody was closed for Memorial Day, but for the week through Thursday, 368,000. That's 9,000 more than the same week a year ago, so that's healthy. One point of interest there on your slaughter, your actual slaughter come in for the week ending May the 18th, and your dressed steer weights dropped another 3 pounds compared to last report at 849 pounds. That's just 3 pounds over where the weights bottomed out last year, and we'll see if they get lower than that. But not a lot of weight on these cattle right now. There is compared to the history of the world, but not compared to the last few years. But let's talk about your feeder cattle market. Your real-time index on Cattle Market Central, late in the day on Thursday, sitting at 133.35, down $4.87. When the receipts are light like they've been here the last week or so, whenever you get the market moving in one direction heavily, and we had a lot of sales on Thursday, it'll take it, guys, and it's taken it a long ways this time, just like it went up a week ago because we had a special sale or two. But look at some of your big sales on Thursday. Pratt, Kansas finally had a big sale. They've had a lot of weather in that part of the country, but $3,700 for Pratt. Feeder steers $2 to $3 lower than the lighter test last week. Feeder heifers steady to a buck lower. Not enough calves to really test the market. Tell you where they had a good sale was in Stanford, Kentucky at Bluegrass Stockyard South. They had nearly 1,800 cattle there. Good market on the cattle, and I don't know, well, I know that happened early in the morning. They get going early, plus you're on Eastern time, so they had no idea what was fixing to happen. But at Bluegrass Stockyard South in Stanford, they were selling load lots and bigger of yearlings at a pretty impressive market, and higher than they get in the central part of the United States. the buyers may be thinking twice by the middle of the afternoon, but nevertheless it happened in a cash market. But the best quote I saw come out of Stanford, 123 head of 838-pound steers in Stanford, Kentucky bring $142. Very impressive. But the biggest quote of the day comes out of an area a long ways from there. Billings Livestock in Billings, Montana sold 55 head of 836-pound steers at $144.75. And that's your feeder flash for Friday.